That's not the A camera. What's up, everybody? As you can see, things are going a little bit wacky. I was trying to restart my computer. Let me look over here, make sure you can hear me. Yes, and everything's being switched around and moved around. And like my C camera, my overhead camera is not working at all. So we're just gonna go with it. Let's see what we're doing here. Yeah, but it's set as the A camera. There we go. Something to pay attention to. So anyone who uses eCam, you will now know that even though you set the cameras to A and B, when you restart your computer, if your cam links are being recognized as cam link 1 and 2 separately, then it will actually, still flip around the cameras. So that's exactly what's happening. But with that being said, welcome to yet another live stream. This is episode number 116. That's 116 consecutive weeks of the Camera Junkie live stream. And as always, I thank you for hanging out and taking the time and spending it here with me. Today, I'm going to be talking about the new releases or soon to be released cameras. I believe they come out in April, which is quite a bit away, over a month away to be knowing about cameras and still have them on pre-order. But Canon did release a couple of new cameras, an R8 and an R50 full frame and APS-C cameras. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But first, let's see exactly who's here in the Camera Junkie crew. Well, from what I can see here, we have Mr. Paul Duncan in the house. He's hanging out here with me, Mr. Moderator, saying hello to the fam. And also letting you know that if you have any questions, to please put a Q colon in front of it. It will help me get to that question once we're at that portion of the live stream. But with that being said, I'm going to get right into it and get into today's podcast / soliloquy. Well, if it is your first time, please make sure to introduce yourself in the comments below. Say hello so you can get a nice Camera Junkie welcome. And if you're watching it on the replay and you have any questions, leave the questions in the comments. I do read everything and I'll be happy to answer your question there as well. If it is your first time, what I do is I actually record a podcast section in the middle, which I'll be getting into in a little bit, and that's when I'll be touching over today's subject at hand. And like I mentioned before, if you do have any questions that you want me to answer, whether it be about tonight's subject or anything at all, please put a Q colon in front of them. So we're gonna get right into it. Okay. In 5, 4. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Camera Junkie podcast. I'm gonna start that over again. 5, 4. What's up, and welcome back to another episode of the Camera Junkie podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about cameras. And even though I always say upgrade your skills before your gear, Canon has just released a couple of new cameras that I do want to talk about. Their new releases are the new R8 and R50 camera bodies. Now, as of right now, they will be available, I believe, on April 14th of 2023. So if you're hearing this before or after that date, just know that they might not or should be readily available for pickup. There are a lot of similarities and some differences in these cameras, and that's kind of what I want to touch on. Now, they're both 24.2 megapixel cameras, but the biggest difference is that the R8 is a full frame sensor and the R50 is an APS-C. Now, if you're familiar with camera or Canon cameras, Canon camera bodies, you would know that the M50 and the M50 Mark II is one of their most highly bought, or one of their most famous APS-C mirrorless camera body system that they have. So this is basically a replacement to that camera body and that system, but in still the APS-C form. So now Canon, with their R series cameras, have been using the R mount, which has also brought in their new R lenses, which are highly sought after. But there are a lot of Canon users that have resisted the transition from DSLRs to the mirrorless bodies, and this is who I think these cameras are really set or catered to, because at the price points that they are, it's kind of like a no-brainer. There's really no excuse to still be using a DSLR. So the Canon R50, being APS-C, does still give you the 24.2 megapixel file at the end, but you would have to apply that 1.6 crop factor that is famous for APS-C cameras with Canon. What's another similarity? Well, better said, another difference between it is that the Canon R8 has a 5-axis image stabilization. So the 5-axis image stabilization is only used in video, which is very interesting, because this being a hybrid camera, I would wonder why they wouldn't apply that also for photography. But it has a 5-axis in-body image stabilization, meaning it's an IBIS system, and it's there only for video. So it's kind of lending me to believe that these cameras are going to be catered more for the video-centric type of creator, and that's kind of the market that they're looking for, even though this should be the replacements to anyone who's still using a DSLR. So it has a 5-axis image stabilization, but only for video. So I found that to be very interesting. The R50, being the APS-C and kind of the replacement of the M50, also has no stabilization whatsoever. So I haven't found any information to see if there's an actual digital stabilization available on the camera, but as a stabilization in point, from the information that I've been looking, haven't seen any whatsoever. Now, another key feature to these cameras is that they're also shutterless or mechanical shutterless. So they only have an electronic shutter on these new cameras, kind of like the R70, I believe. Oh, no, sorry, the C70, which is their cinema line cameras that literally does not have a shutter whatsoever, and these cameras are following suit. Interestingly enough, the R8, it could shoot up to 40 frames a second in this shutterless mode, and 40 frames a second for photography is very interesting. You can get 120 files in JPEG or 56 RAW, which basically is letting you know that you can shoot continuously in high burst mode for 3 seconds in JPEG, and basically just a little bit over 1 second if you're shooting raw images. Another difference between the cameras has to do not only with their frames per second, but their buffer size. So the R50 compared to the R8 actually only goes up to 15 frames per second, even though it's a digital shutter, so it's not a mechanical shutter, and that will only allow you up to 28 JPEGs or 7 raw images. So it's hindered in that aspect because it literally doesn't have the physical memory on board to be able to host more files. That's why even in the slower frames per second mode for these cameras, on the R50 it drops from 15 to 12, which is really interesting that it didn't go slower than that, but it goes to 12 frames per second, and that will allow you 42 JPEGs and 7 raw images in both. So the 7 raw images in the Canon R50 is the max that you can get when it comes to raw images out of the buffer before you start reaching like a lag within the speed, and you can no longer shoot at the 15 frames per second, but you're limited to the speed of the camera being able to dump the information onto the memory card. That's why when the R8 having a much bigger buffer, memory buffer within the system, allows you for the 120 JPEGs and 56 RAWs. And if you're shooting in the slow burst, mode, which is 6 frames per second, that's why I found it interesting that the R50 doesn't shoot at a lower speed than 12 frames per second. But I digress. At the 6 frames per second in the R8, you're able to get 1,000 JPEGs before you reach your buffer limit, and you also get to shoot 1,000 raw images before you reach that same limit. So that really has everything to do with, like I said, the speed that you're able to dump off the files from the buffer to the memory card. So the better system or the higher buffer that you have, you can capture more. But in all sincerity, 1,000 images, whether they're JPEG and RAW, just to give you my 2 cents, is a lot of images for a couple of seconds. Like, to be able to shoot that burst, you're gonna have a lot of repeat photography, and that's where I would highly recommend you to upgrade your skills to be able to take better shots, so that you can take less amount of shots and have less clutter and less work on the back end, having to cull through so many photos. So that's just my 2 cents on it. But like I mentioned before, it does seem that these cameras are being directed to the content creators, to the video centric side, but to a limit. And this is where Canon is bringing out their legendary cripple hammer, because the R8, because it shoots in 10-bit, is limited to a 30-minute record limit, meaning recording within the camera, you could only shoot 30-minute bursts, which is so like antiquated system, right? The limitations that were there and the reasons why that existed in the first place are no longer here, are no longer in place. So there's no reason for this arbitrary limitation to be applied, unless it's something that they're trying to keep cool with the system, which it could be, but it's limiting you to 30 minutes of record time, whether it's 4K or 1080, which is why it leaves me scratching my head. Now the R50, being the APS-C, actually allows you to record up to 1 hour, but still has a limit and doesn't just basically have unlimited recording. But here's a little tip: if you happen to use Ecamm, you should be able to connect these cameras as a webcam through the USB-C and basically run them indefinitely and use Ecamm to be your recording medium, like I'm doing here. I have two A6100s, so I'll go over to my secondary camera. There we go. And they're both recording through Ecamm indefinitely, and I haven't used a memory card within my studio in over a year, and I've loved every second about it. But let's get back to the cameras that we're talking about. These are using micro HDMI, so if you wanted to get a higher quality output, because I believe the webcam is limited to 720 on both of these cameras, but if you wanted to get the highest quality image out of them, they do have micro HDMI. Me, as a APS-C Sony user, micro HDMI doesn't really bother me that much because I utilize it and I'm able to work around it. But Sony, and I believe even Nikon's new cameras, I'm not too sure about the new Fuji, But I also wouldn't doubt that the new Panasonic also has full frame or full size HDMI connections, no matter what type of system that they're running, APS-C, full frame, etc. But if how could I explain this? Like, if you're going into the video centric side of cameras, this is where Canon once again kind of brings out the cripple hammer, so to speak, and doesn't put in a full frame or full size HDMI on any of their cameras, because they're keeping that for their cinema line, their C cameras. And even though the C70 has a mini HDMI, so they're still not even going full HDMI. But I'm getting off the rails here, so let's continue. But the biggest difference that I've noticed is that the R50 is going to be recording in 8-bit still, and doesn't have the 10-bit capability, and the Canon R8 will have the 10-bit, and I'm thinking that might be a bit of the limitation that has to do with the time limit. Maybe they're just trying to make sure that their cameras don't overheat, so that doesn't also become, an issue that people are constantly talking about. The good things about it is that they're both, like I said, micro HDMI, USB-C, so they're both could be connected as webcams without needing use of a third-party software. So basically just plug and play, dual pixel autofocus, and 3-inch 3.26 million dot LCD screens on the flippy. I'm team flip up, but they're the originators of the team flip out, so the flippy LCDs are gonna be on these cameras. So who are these cameras for? Like I said, on top of the entry level cameras that Canon is now providing, it is the easiest and the most inexpensive way to get into the R mount system. Now, I always mention glass before ass, that the optics are more important than the camera body, because if you have a crappy lens on top of an amazing camera, you're still gonna get crappy images. But if you have a decent camera, something a bit older but it's the flagship of its day, right? You can get a new lens, a new high quality prime, and take amazing images, because optics are more important than the camera body. So with Canon coming out with a lot of great lenses for the R mount, there's still the holdouts, right? The people who still have their DSLRs on the EF mount system that love their L lenses, that love their primes, they love their DSLRs, and have been hesitant to move over to the mirrorless world. Now, with a simple adapter, this is the easiest and once again most inexpensive way to get into this system. The R50 is at $760, I believe. I had to restart my computer, so let me grab my phone. I'm gonna grab my phone and check B&H real quick. Probably cut this part out of the podcast. Oh no, so I was right. Wow. The Canon R50 body only is being sold for $680, $679. So that's not even $800. The $800 comes with an 18 to 45 millimeter lens. So this is actually like really, really inexpensive to get in there. This is like I would say a rival to Sony's ZV-E10, right? Or the entry level interchangeable lens mount for their system, and it's priced accordingly. So it's just there, hovering under $700. It's kind of like a no-brainer to be able to get into like the latest version of Sony's, software, autofocus system, dual pixel, and still be able to use your old lenses. Now you will be, kind of hindered by the speed of the autofocusing motors on these said old lenses, but it allows you to use them in the meantime while you build up your new arsenal of R lenses to go with your new R cameras. Now, one thing that I did want to mention that surprised me, but it does make sense, but it's something that you haven't been seeing as of late, which is that this APS-C offering from Canon, the R50, has a pop-up flash. So it still takes it back to that DSLR type bodies. Now, some of Sony's cameras also do let me get some water here. Some of Sony's cameras do provide this in the APS-C, but when it comes to the full frame, you're gonna have to attach a flash to it. But it's a pleasant surprise to see that they still thought to add that in their APS-C line, knowing that most APS-C photographers are entry level. This could be their first camera, and to have that feature to be applied to be able to get better, not great, but better night photography within the system itself, it's a really nice touch. So to be able to see that, it's almost nostalgic to see that little light pop up, and I'm glad that they put that in there. So the Canon R8 body alone is at $1,500, so that's also a really good price for an entry level full frame camera. The Sony's equivalent, I believe it's at $1,800 in the A7C. Could be a bit cheaper depending on where you get it, but that's exactly what you're looking at when it comes to these price points. So anyone who was hesitant before, who didn't like the price tags of these previous R cameras, really don't have a lot to complain about, or really don't have an excuse now to be able to say that there's a reason to not be shooting mirrorless, to not be taking advantage of the new technology. So if you've been thinking about it, if you're one of these DSLR holdouts, I really tell you to jump on this opportunity. There's, it's not like it's been a long time coming, so to speak. Or better said, that it has been. You've been holding out up to this point, and mirrorless has been around for over 10 years now. And this is the best and easiest way to start your RF or your R mount journey. Now, the prices are so good that it's even got me scratching my head as a camera junkie to be able to pick something up, but it might even allow that the older cameras that have been around, like the Canon RP, just to mess around, should really drop in price as well, that being available now with these new releases. So whenever something new comes out and the price is justifiable, then it takes all their previous offerings and just makes them even that much more attractive. But with that being said, now I'm gonna get into the part that I like so much: Cities Gaw, channels that I think you should go and watch. And seeming that today we've been talking all about Canon, I'm gonna bring in the elephant in the room, so to speak. And today's Cities Gaw is none other than Mr. McKinnon. All right, so let me make sure that we take this over here. Where am I? I'm gonna switch this up here. This is so cool that I could actually mess with all this stuff here in real time now. There we go. That looks better. New widget that we can mess with, but anyways, I'll continue. This week's on Cities God channels that I think you should go and watch, none other than Mr. Peter McKinnon. Now, those of you who might not know this, a little bit of information is that me, Mr. Camera Junkie, myself, I probably wouldn't be here if not in part for Mr. Peter McKinnon, because when I was in my researching journey, getting back and learning all the information that I had lost in all the years that I was outside of photography, I did hop on the University of YouTube and started gathering as much information, as much intel as possible. And throughout my journey is when I came across Mr. Peter McKinnon, and he was the first one that I came across that mentioned to subscribe to his channel. Now, I remember it was something that I was looking at, and you know, at the end of the video, I was like, this guy's pretty cool. And he was like, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, do all the things, yada yada yada. And I had no idea what subscribing to a channel was, but that sparked the curiosity of what a YouTube subscription was, allowed me to better understand the platform, allowed me to really understand it, and then really started to drive the want to create my own channel, which is what brought this all together. Now, if you haven't heard of Mr. Peter McKinnon as a camera junkie, I would be honored to be the first one to introduce you to his work. He's an incredible content creator, an amazing personality, and as a theme to a lot of the people who are on my Cities Gaw portion of the podcast / live stream, is that he was someone that I felt like I can go and have a drink with, someone that I can go hang out with, and it was something that was very personable, and that's what attracted me and allowed me to have him be the first person that I subscribed to out of all of YouTube. And that led me on a path of a bunch of new incredible content creators, friendships, experiences, opportunities, and everything that you see here in front of you in part has to do with the inspiration that Mr. McKinnon allowed me to see in the possibilities of this platform just by simply asking me to subscribe to his channel. But like I said, if you haven't heard of this man, which it's really hard, I doubt, but if you haven't, he's, like I said, a Canon shooter. His latest video is about exactly that, the Canon R8 and the new releases that is available from Canon. He's a Canon ambassador of light, and an all-around seems to be a pretty cool dude. Like I said, I can't wait for the day that I get to meet him as a fellow content creator on the platform and let him know that, like I said, in part, everything that I've been able to amass and do on this platform had a little bit to do with him first enlightening me to what are the possibilities here on YouTube. But if you haven't heard of him already, Mr. Peter McKinnon is this week's Cities Gaw channels that I think you should go and watch. And with that, we have done it. Another successful podcast. Thank you for listening to me, and I can't wait to do it all over again next week. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will talk to you next time. All right, and that concludes my podcasting portion of the video. And now we're gonna get into it. You know what? I forgot to turn this on. Boom, boom. Come on, let's turn it on. There we go. Let's get blue back there. And let's go back to the comments. Gotta turn those back on. Oh, we got some people popping in here. Hey, Rich, how you doing, sir? All right, he's got a question for us. He says, is the ZV-1 mirrorless or something else? Actually, it is mirrorless. The only difference that it is that it's a fixed lens. So even though it has the same type of properties, because it works exactly the same, the only thing is that you cannot change the lenses on it. So my ZV-1F, also F fixed lens, you can't change it, so you will never be able to see the sensor. Now the difference between the ZV-1, the ZV-1F, they have both the same 1-inch sensor. So when it comes to the size of the sensor, whether it's full frame, APS-C, this is an even smaller type sensor, much bigger than something that you would find on a cell phone, but still smaller than APS-C. And with that being said, it is still the same type of system. Now, these cameras also are, like what I mentioned before, shutterless. So they're completely mirrorless, and they don't have a physical shutter to actually like take a photograph. This is like basically a handy cam. So like the way that the old 3 CCD cameras used to work, the old handy cams where there would be, you know, just a constant feed of video, that's more or less the way that these cameras work. Now when you hit the shutter on it for photography, you'll be able to take an image, but the mechanics of the way that it's interpreting the light through the system is a mirrorless system nonetheless on these digital cameras. But that's also, you know, to give you a little bit more context on it, this is a mirrorless camera. See? Because there's no reflex action, and that's what basically makes a mirrored camera, is the fact that there's a reflex mirror that would redirect the light, and you would have to change that or move it out of the way to actually take an image. So now that we remove that section from it, and you're basically just putting a lens in front of a sensor and allowing that to capture the image, that is in exact, that is what mirrorless is. That there is no mirror between the lens and the sensor. So all of these digital cameras are mirrorless. Oh, you didn't derail it, sir. As you can see, I went on my soliloquy. That I have to do that. Like, I have to kind of just get that out, and then we'll deal with it, and then we can squirrel all we want. We can go any which way and direction. Oh, there you go. Paul's the bomb, man. Paul's the best freaking moderator. It's just, there's nothing to be said. He basically just said that in a nutshell. But if you're here right now, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you hit the like button. It's highly appreciated, and it goes a long way. And he also answered the question. He says, yes, they're both mirrorless, but they're all mirrorless right now. That's what I'm saying. So in all sincerity, like DSLR cameras, right? Digital single lens reflex cameras are still kind of mirrorless. So for example, that camera on the top shelf there, the camera on the top shelf there, that's the Nikon D5100. So that's a digital single lens reflex camera. What it allows is that I'm able to put my eye through the viewfinder with it being completely off, and the optics with the bouncing of the light off of that reflex mirror allows me to see what's going on through the lens. But If I put it into video mode, right? In video mode to record video, it automatically permanently holds up that lens, or the mirror, to be said. And it in that action of holding up the mirror, it totally nullifies the viewfinder, because it's not digital, it is an optical viewfinder. So the fact that the mirror is covering the viewfinder, that viewfinder is no longer usable. You're forced to use the LCD on the back of the camera, and now there is no longer a mirror in front of it, and all the light is being hit directly onto the sensor, being interpreted and recorded through the camera the way that it comes. So that's what I'm saying. Even though it has the option, DSLR cameras are really more hybrid in both, because whenever they went into video mode, they have to become mirrorless. They have to get it out of the way to record the video in the first place. All right, John sneaking in here, saying hi to the camera fam. And Sly is here as well, saying hi everyone, driving but listening. Thank you. Art Carrasco's in here saying, sup all, it's been a while since I could make a live stream. Yeah, you've been busy, bro. I've been seeing your stuff on Instagram. Cool stuff with the boxing and like the behind the scenes. That's really cool, and I'm really happy to see you getting out there and, you know, taking photos and getting in the pits and being part of that experience. Is super cool to see you go through that, man. Okay, Macaulay Howell, hopefully I said that right, says hi, I'm new. So hi, I'm Lewis, MCJ, Mr. Camera Junkie, and welcome to the live stream. Oh, don't worry, he just correcting himself. Like, I read typo, don't worry. And Paul giving you the nice welcome. Albert's in the house saying hello. So is Kathy saying hi to the Camera Junkies. Says welcome to everyone. Words are difficult sometimes, and today I need to get hydrated. Like Banju says, words are hard today. Okay. He says, welcome to everyone that just joined. For everyone, don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you very much, John. There we go, so that everyone can see. Mulain TV saying hi there, Mr. Camera Junkie. And Marine X saying door kicked in. As always, thank you all for hanging out here. So yeah, I'm really interested in these offerings from Canon. I'm really surprised with some of the decisions that they made, but I'm thinking that they're all really trying to make it cost effective in every way possible. But these cameras, like this R50, at that price point, it really does leave me like scratching my head, because for photography and things like that, I wouldn't have a problem adapting my older Canon lenses, right? Like, one of my secret weapons, so to speak, is an old APO film lens from my Canon system that I adapt to Sony. And to be able to use it, I use it sparingly, is because, to get a bit nerdy with y'all, right? Like, it used such an old autofocusing system, right? That the motors that drive the focusing elements, like the glass, is ran off of a rubber band. So let that sink in. Within the lens itself, there's a motor with a little wheel that attaches not by teeth and gears, but by a rubber band held at tension to be put on another wheel to drive the focusing motors. And whenever I try to use the autofocus on it, man, it's horrible. Horrible is such a nice word for the way that this thing works and sounds. It is it is on the struggle bus so bad. So even though I love the lens, I only use it in manual mode because it's more accurate and way faster. You know, it is so much faster to just be able to be like, I put focus peaking on my camera that allows me to see what's in focus while I'm, you know, manually focusing it, and snap away, and I get a lot of good images. That, and that it's heavy because it's a tank, it's a much older lens, but the images that I get from it are like film-esque. Like, and when I say film-esque, I mean motion picture film-esque, like cinematic photography. And that's why I won't get rid of that lens. I absolutely love it. Should probably use it more for video, right? Because for video you can have it, you know, a long ways, but I would need a lot more space. I digress. It's a great lens, and I still have a couple of my Canon lenses running around there. That these cameras make me think about, you know, pulling out the adapter or finding an adapter from R to the EF and having some fun, you know, with a, you know, $680 camera. That's what really blows me away. The price point, like the price point for this R50 is so inexpensive that you really just don't have an excuse. It is like picking up a Sony ZV-E10 or a ZV-1 or the ZV-1F, right? That they're just so inexpensive that it's like basically a no-brainer. So that's where I would leave it with these cameras. The Canon R50, if you've been holding out with your DSLR, this is the no-brainer camera that you should get. Okay, so Sly says, just made it home. Have to tell you something funny, Lewis. I worked all weekend setting up the background and the music for my live stream. Tested it, it worked perfectly, and then I forgot to turn it on. Oh, so you're talking about the lights. Yeah, all those things are things that you know, put in place, but then you forget to actually turn them on. If it wasn't for the fact that like things weren't working the way that they should, you know, like cameras are not working, my C camera up above over here, my my behind the scenes cam is just completely done, but I think that has to do with the cable and the iPhone. I gotta check it out. Plus it wasn't even the best iPhone to begin with, so let's just put that there. But still, that's not working. A bunch of things are not working. I'm like, the show must go on. We'll fix it for next week. And with all of those things, I totally forgot to turn on the background lights and maybe a bunch of other lights too, you know. Like I'm looking at my background now, and I'm like, we seem to be okay. I try to keep it clean mostly, and for those of you who haven't heard me say this before, the tip is the cone of cleanliness, right? So if this were to be working, my overhead camera, you would see a nice, neat desk showing you what I have in front of me for my live stream. But just off of the camera, what that doesn't see is a whole hot mess of everything that was on my desk before I went live, that I just scooted over there and said, I'll deal with you once we're done with the live stream, right? Because it's the truth. So what I do is I just make sure that you just take a quick look. You're like, yeah, there's nothing in the background that's like, you know, catching your eye or being distracting, right? You don't got some dirty laundry, you're good to go. And that's it. Make sure that your cone of cleanliness is as clean as possible, and hit go on your live streaming journey. So there we go. It says going to work on the border this week. Well, the border's easy. If you have any issues or need any help with it, you know, just reach out. But the borders are just, well, what I do is that I have a background video that's in loop, and then I have a camera above it, which is locked right now. But if I unlock it, will I be able to get, see? Just the size. centered, and we're good to go. Then I lock it. That's it. Done deal. Okay, Marine X says, the worst autofocus I've ever used in video is my Fujifilm X100V. They 100% do not care about video, and that camera image is just so amazing though. That's very interesting. Hey bro, like I tell him, I read typos. Like that's just the way my brain works. I interlace it. It's like, what is it? Grammarly's built in, so I don't even see the errors. It says I need to start doing a pre-live stream workflow. I think you could set up my stream deck up for the pre-show stuff, right? Absolutely, man. I have everything set up here on stream deck buttons, right? So I just hit this button and I get my second shot. I also have, like I mentioned before, a folder with all the cameras like on a loop. But the thing is that I literally just have the 3 cameras put in there, and I have the folder do all of like the amount of time, how fast they switch, so on and so forth. I just give it the parameters. I haven't been using it because the back camera is part of that system and it's just frozen, so I wouldn't want it to get stuck for a minute and a half on a black screen while I'm talking. So that's that. I decided no switching cameras for today, and that's it. You see it, like, and it's not like it really takes away or does anything, because if I did want to switch to my secondary camera, I just go to my next scene, and then I have all of those scenes set up. So my cities GAW graphic is an overlay that goes over any scene. So if I decide to change scenes, cities GAW stays there until I remove it or go to the actual cities GAW like scene that I have set up. Right? That's simple. So then when I go to say bye to everyone, like I will be doing shortly, right? I go from my main scene. Oh, it mutes me as soon as it goes to the outro scene. So it goes from this scene to the outro scene, which you just saw, and that's all at a push of a button here. Another cool thing is that you can finish the live stream. So as soon as I hit the outro, I don't have to worry about like pressing or double clicking or anything. I have the finish live stream button right there. Just be careful that you don't hit it in the middle of a live stream. And yeah, you'll be fine. But you'll be able to add pretty much anything. And that's why we were talking about it last week, you know, about adding like those animated GIFs in with sound. The WebM files with the transparent backgrounds, those are all going to be set up through like the Stream Deck at a push of a button, you know, so that whenever you want to set up something, or just kind of like hitting the buttons, you know, like on the Rodecaster Pro, hitting the MIDI buttons and hitting all the sound effects and all that stuff. It's basically the same thing. And the listen to me, I'm getting mixed up. The Stream Deck, not the Rodecaster Pro, but the Stream Deck actually has sound effects just the same way that you can download through the Stream Deck player. Now, I don't recommend them. I don't think they sound good. Excuse me, that's my opinion, right? But they are there and available that you should be able to just apply them at a push of a button. And you get access to like copyright free music and sound effects if it's something that you're looking for through Stream Deck itself. And all you have to do is actually like set up your account. So you know what, let me do that real quick. Check this out. We're gonna go into live demo mode. Boom. Because with live demo mode, you get to see everything that I see. So this is what I see back here. As you can see, my iPhone camera's stuck on stupid, right? But once we're here, I'm gonna go into my Stream Deck, configure the Stream Deck. Oh, the window popped open over here. right? So we're here, and here is it? No, in the settings, right? In the settings, you'll have your preferences, and then you have accounts. So once you click on account, look at this. I have Mr. Camera Junkie at gmail.com, which is of course the email that's associated to this YouTube channel, right? Mr. Camera Junkie. And because I was able to synchronize that account with this profile and this preference, let me close that out now. All of the sound effects, all of the, all of the sound effects, all of the music, all of the things that I would be using from the Elgato Stream Deck store will pass the copyright infringement, or the copyright claim authentication through YouTube, because my account is already set up through the Stream Deck with Elgato. So their entire library is available to me as a content creator because I bought their Stream Deck. So the links for my gear is in the description if you're interested. Highly appreciated if you were to pick one up, but I always recommend the Stream Deck. Not only is it an amazing tool, but if you do have one, price of admission, so to speak, $150 for a piece of kit that's still going to give you access to royalty-free music, even if it's a little bit, sound effects and everything. It's a pretty good deal. So Sly's got a question here. It says, do you think Canon will ever bring back eye-controlled autofocus? It works so much better than having to tap the LCD. I don't think it's gonna be in like everyday cameras, right? Like entry-level cameras, better said, than their flagship cameras. Like, it's a technology that, even though it's very good, I know has to be very expensive. Now, they also haven't, to my understanding, they haven't really perfected it as well. So they might be on the Apple tip, so to speak, where they're waiting to perfect the technology before they start releasing it to the masses. Because even though they did introduce it, the general consensus is that it doesn't always work, right? It doesn't always work. And when you do want it to work, you have to calibrate it every single time. If you wanted to use it and it was my camera, you would have to kind of reset calibration and calibrate it to your eye to then use it. And then to give it back to me, even if it was for 2 seconds, I would then have to just calibrate it to my eye and redo the whole system. And that becomes a pain point, especially with the fact that they don't have any profiles that you could save to it as saying camera person 1 or camera person 2. And just to correct myself, I didn't think it had it, but it does have it, a way for you to register your face. So Sony cameras give you the ability to register your face and have it saved on there, so that when it sees you within the picture, it knows to emphasize, or to basically prioritize your face, right? It's in the name, right? Face priority. Hello, Lewis. Let's get with it. But anyway, it's going to prioritize your face over any other face that it can see in the frame. So that's where I wish, that technology, or I would think that that's where that technology would need to get to, it working better with the calibration, and to be able to save profiles for 1 or 2 people, so that it could actually be viable. Now, as a camera enthusiast, the system seems so cool, right? To be able to just especially me that I love viewfinders. So I prefer using the viewfinder to be going in there and to just be snapping away and just enjoying what you're photographing, right? That was Aiden just throwing something on my foot, but I'll be fine. Uh, but just being able to enjoy your photography, right? Like if you were just watching nature, right? If you're like a bird photographer or sports photographer, to be able to follow the action, right? And let's say that you, like, I would use, for example, like hockey, because hockey, the puck moves around so fast. So if that was something that you wanted to focus on, this type of eye autofocus or eye detect autofocus, I think that's what Sony calls theirs. So it's very interesting. But you know, the eye controlled autofocus, like you say, the eye controlled autofocus, I think it's a very interesting and dynamic system. I just hope that they get to polish off that gem. You know, I really wish that they get to put the R&D in it to get it to be as reliable as their dual pixel autofocus, you know, because when you can rely on something is when it becomes commonplace. So that's how I feel about it. I do wish that they don't abandon it, right? And maybe put some more R&D in the background before they just start slapping it on cameras and having people complain about the way that it works. Wow, I can just rant about cameras, about anything, just, and like that 10 minutes go by and that could be a whole nother like mini podcast. But I have to thank you all always for hanging out here with me and taking the time. You guys make this, like I say, the best part of my every week. I absolutely love spending it here on the Camera Junkie live stream. But the words today are hard. Okay. If you don't know, we do this every Saturday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And next week will be 117 consecutive weeks, and we will keep this train rolling and going strong. So thank you once again for taking the time. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I can't wait to do it all over again next week. See you there. See, the outro was just a hit of a button. See you guys.